This is another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time we're covering chapter 22.3. Still in the same arc, Cell. Still the Hell in the Cell match. Hey, Greg. I shall turn the music down since I'll be talking a bit more at this point. As the reminder for the audience participation question, this time it was, what's a favorite perspective trick that is facilitated by a parahuman power? My example being Taylor listening to multiple simultaneous conversations with bugs in this chapter. Let's switch it over to the real art post speed draw. I really like this one. It's Danny walking into the interrogation room with Tag and Miss Militia. It's a pretty good moment. Taylor's are all haunted, looking very The Ring. Headphones off since the song's nearing the end. No, I say that, but you know, as the song does its thing, I will think about the themes of the chapter. One of the themes, family. You know, they try and use Danny's father's perspective against her. They themselves, Tag and Kid Win and all, think that the Undersiders would go after their families, which, like, probably Regent would, but the others wouldn't, kind of thing. And he wouldn't because the others were there. But they themselves are completely willing to use Danny against Taylor. So it's like this weird, obvious double standard. I mean, nobody points it out in chapter, so I guess maybe it's not like beating you over the head with it, but it is pretty clear. So yes, family. And then, like, the major, like, power dynamics, like the interpersonal power dynamics between all the different characters, is, like, clearly happening the whole time, but then when the chapter ends, there's this big shift in the room. So we'll talk about that as we get to it, but I like their little power games and things that happen in this chapter. And Taylor gets to be mean to Tag at one point, and I love that. That's in the sort of shifting power dynamics thing, because it comes right after they realize the property transfer has happened. But anyway, moving past the themes and sort of getting into it, for 22.3, the chapter starts with one of my favorite bits, as talked about in the question, where Taylor's listening into multiple conversations of people outside the room that she's in at the same time. she's actually having a hard time focusing on it because she's trying to do too many things. But pushing herself is usually good. That's usually how she gets better at stuff. So she tells Kaye not to talk to her for the next few minutes, and he does his work while she listens in on everything the heroes are doing. We sort of get reminded right away that the heroes at the behest of Tag are calling Danny and getting him to come down to this building so that they can, variously, like, antagonize him, antagonize her with him, use the threat of antagonizing him against her. Normal stuff that you do when you're a figure like Tag. And again, it's the kind of thing where like they themselves are, in just a minute, are going to talk about how, like, oh, they definitely use our families against us, and it's like, well, you definitely think that also because you'd do it. Greg says, good guy shit. Exactly. I mean, if they were really, like, heroic, they wouldn't do this kind of thing, but I think Tag's a pretty real portrayal of, like, the kind of guy who will kind of just do anything to get the win. So anyway, I like that Clockblocker brings up to the wards that Taylor had wanted to defect and join Defiant and Dragon. I find it kind of funny that everybody kind of started talking at the same time, which is also part of what throws her off. And then Jessica Yamada tries to, like, cool the situation off by telling Tag that whenever they do something to her dad, then she escalates her, like, violence and stuff. So this is maybe a bad plan. And Tag's like, that's true. We'll talk about it somewhere else, but that is true. Hi, Vale. And then Vista's all shocked by them wanting to, or by her wanting to hunt the Slaughterhouse 9. But, it's not so surprising. She was very open with the heroes about how, like gung-ho she was against the Slaughterhouse 9. I guess maybe they just attributed it to Gru being a prisoner, but I really think that overall she was just in the thick of it against the Slaughterhouse 9 in a way that, like, almost no one else was. Just the Undersiders and Travelers were doing the bulk of the fighting. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they bring up, she didn't kill any, did she? Asks Kidwin. Gru supposedly killed Burnscar. Pigot killed Crawler and Mannequin. They killed Cherish themselves, basically. Vista finished off Shatterbird when things caved in, or after things caved in on them at the Echidna fight. No, Skitter didn't kill any of them, I don't think. She was there, though. Have to give her credit. She did make a difference in that last fight with Mannequin and Crawler. This time I actually pre-prepared some of these photos, so, like, here's that beautiful rendition of the post-firebombing thing where Taylor's flying above it and looking down on Weld fighting Crawler. Pretty cool stuff. And then, what I wanted to point out was my scene, my favorite art that I've done for this podcast. Stream thing, whatever. The classic miasma pic. They just don't know the full story that she was up in their business fighting Jack and Jill over there. And Bonesaw, when they were in the, like, critical moment. Because if she hadn't been able to get Panacea to undo the thing, then it all would have been over for the whole city. So, really, Taylor, MVP. Let's see here. Vale says, podcast? No, this is the International Review of Literature and the Arts. Oh, yeah, you're right. I forgot for some reason. I don't know. It's weird. But she didn't score any kills. Her KD is terrible. You're right, Greg. You're right. You're so right. Anyway. I just think it's like such a funny argument that it's like, well, she was fighting them the whole time, and she was like, they had all the plans and they did all the major operations, but she didn't personally kill any, so I don't know. It's so stupid. Oh, man. This is when Tag reveals that Flechette has switched sides. Kid Wins like, oh! And then Clock Blocker is like, it's not a trick, it's confirmed. And then Miss Militia says, as far as they know, it's not Regent, and it sure seems credible. Crucible just outright asks what happened, and they tell the rest of them that Flechette has joined the Undersiders to be helping Parian, etc. No, she became a villain? What? What the hell? Classic Vista. And then Clock Blocker says what they were all thinking. She was in love. Oh, Alien Cat Daddy is here. Nice, I'm early. Yeah. Pretty early into it. And then, Jessica Yamada again tries to be like, we can't just give away all her personal details. And then Miss Militia's like, I'm not bound by any code of ethics. I'm gonna just tell them she came from a broken home. So she sort of describes this, and they'll go more into Flechette's backstory in Ward, because like I've said in the past, there's like a lot of flashbacks to stuff that happens pre-Worm, but like she's got a they show her trigger event, and it is like a crazy occurrence. It's like this awful thing. Theoretically they are all like awful, but a lot of them are just kind of not as bad as other ones. I don't know. Like we'll see Dauntless's trigger event later, and he's like, it's a harrowing situation in some ways, but it's just nothing compared to like the Flechette one, which is like insane. But yeah, I just think it's like an understatement to be like, she came from a broken home. It's like worse than that. Anyway, so they sort of explain why I think Glory Girl triggers in the middle of a basketball game or something. Shakes my head. Yep, it is true. That is what happens. Although, they always talk about her trigger event like it's a physical trigger, but it's clearly a mental trigger event when you actually sort of see it from her perspective and you think about like what Glory Girl's power is. So that's kind of fun. Oh, I think I forgot to turn off notification sounds. Let's do that before we get any more. There we go. Oh, nice. We got an audience participation answer from Vale. That's what it was. And Vale got to do their favorite part of the stream where they send a message and get to hear the notification happen. So, giving the people what they want. Anyway, well, I ruined the entire stream again. Exactly. That's what happened. We're gonna have to scrap it and start over. Uh, um, let's see here. So, yeah, they sort of explain stuff, and then Vista's even like, "We'll be fighting Flechette," when they talk about Skitter's forces striking. And then Tag says he'll like take that into account, and he won't deploy them in an area where they think that that she'll be. He's getting a bunch of other capes from nearby areas, which I assume has to mean like Boston, New York, and whatever else. Because they're so close to Boston, you know. And then let's see here. They talk about how the Undersiders might come at them from other angles, like info or possibly through their families. They mention financially, and like that's a good thing to take into account because like I feel like Tattletale could totally just drain your bank account. Or like everyone's bank account. I feel like she should be doing financial crimes with her power, but I don't know. And yeah, so this is where Crucible's like talking about the families, and he's like, they wouldn't, would they? They would, Kidwin said. Probably. And then Director Tag also says they would. But, you know, he has ideas in mind to keep them from attacking families. I guess he'd have to station like a bunch of troops at each family's house. I don't know how that would work. Safe houses the Tattletale doesn't know about. Who knows? Anyway, so then you know, they sort of break up the meeting and we get the classic Vista quote, "Fuck! Fuck this! Fuck you, Skitter, if you can hear me." Don't worry, Vista, she can. And then they this is when Miss Militia calls Mr. Hebert, I guess. Anyway, Kaye starts talking to her again because she sighs, and she explains that she was listening in to the enemies talking in other rooms. And she sort of says what she heard, and then Kaye says one of those classic lines, "I would never recommend my clients do anything illegal," and they discuss what they can sort of leverage against them, and so they sort of talk ideas. Kaye wants to bring this through more legitimate channels because currently the Brockton Bay is basically in a state of emergency, so they don't have normal laws happening, but if they talk to the state district attorney, then they could go through sort of normal channels again. But then a lot of the stuff they were trying to get wouldn't be able to work because they can't really wheel and deal once it's more official. So she turns him down on that. She's like, "No, we're not going to take this to the DA. It's not law and order up in here." And you know, Kaye keeps trying to justify this, but Taylor's saying how she's espousing why she doesn't think this will work on him, and that Tag will, even if he's sort of out of his depth in some way, still just muddle forward, and that it won't be worth any of the compromises they have to make. And Kaye asks Taylor if she'd be willing to compromise on any of her goals, and she says that that doesn't matter because he's not willing to meet me halfway. Which, like, it's kind of funny because she's always, like, saying, I'm willing to compromise, except I'm not willing to compromise on anything. Could you list the points that you're willing to compromise on, Taylor? You'll have to give me a few days on that. I'll work up a list. There were no items on the list. So, yeah, this is when she sort of implies that they... Or not implies, she just fully says that Tattletale owns all the businesses that have the portal. And then he's saying that he can't really... he can't really directly do anything, but he does call his secretary or assistant or whoever Cecily, and has her sort of reroute the call or whatever. And then let's see here. I'd be worried about like Tinker devices tracing them, but then I just thought to myself, if they had a Tinker device that was tracing the phone call, like, someone would have to be operating it. And probably Taylor would hear them plan to do that, so, kind of covered. It's one of those things where, like, there's so many details in this that, like, you can kind of wiggle your way out of being worried about certain things. I don't know. It's just interesting. My brain goes down so many rabbit holes when I read this book. But Taylor's eaten out the electrical wires of the building to stop Kidwin's anti-bug drones from powering up. I find it very funny. She admits to herself that it's petty, but does it anyway. Forces are being deployed. Their sort of capes are talking to Miss Militia and Tag and then leaving. And then, let's see here. Danny shows up. Instead of taking Danny to the interrogation room, they take him to Tag's office, and then Tag is basically showing him a list of charges, all this stuff. The various stuff that Kaye had read out to them, and potentially all of the crimes that were listed from then until now that didn't make it to Kaye's list. And then, Danny's sort of reeling, and Taylor starts reacting. She does the Arthur clenched fist, and it's enough for Kaye to be able to tell right away that there's something wrong. And when she says that her dad's here, he starts quickly striding out to go get Danny and stuff, and intervene so that he can't just get propaganded by Tag. Tag's telling her all this, or telling him all this stuff, like, she's gonna go to the birdcage, dude. You're screwed. And then Danny's sad. This is when Tag starts leveraging his own family. Like I said, the theme of family. He's like, I have 2 daughters, 4 and 6 years older than Taylor. I can't imagine. And then Danny's basically like, I don't even know how I feel. I can't even, like, vibe check my own emotions, he says. He definitely talks like that. Vale said, it reminds me of a scene from the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin describing the prize someone can win at a carnival game. I'm not sure quite which thing does that, but I do like that movie. I watched it as a kid, and the main thing I remember is that scene where he's like, they're shooting at the cans! Even though someone's trying to assassinate him, so he's like trying to body block the cans of oil. It's so stupid. Oh, man. Steve Martin's a pretty funny guy. Vale, they hate these cans! Yeah. And then Alien Cat Daddy had said, how often do they send 15-year-olds to the birdcage? Unclear. They did send Trickster to the birdcage. He was, I think, 17 or 18 maybe. Probably 17. Taylor's 16, so they're obviously willing to do it again. I don't know how old Glastigwenye was, because she artificially de-ages herself, but she got her powers really young, and she was only, like, sort of going about the world for, like, I guess maybe, now that I think of the timeline, the birdcage can't have existed until Dragon existed. And Dragon... I wonder how long Glastigwenye was bopping around before the birdcage existed. I'm getting myself down so many weird rabbit holes. Alien had said Trickster doesn't have rights. He's from an alternate dimension. Exactly. Straight to jail. Super jail. Vale said the carnival scene. You can win anything on this rack, anything below this row, and anything above this row, anything in the middle area of the row, anything in the middle area of the row between. That is Taylor negotiating what she is willing to compromise on. Gotcha. Timeline. Bird cage. Well, it says here that the bird cage definitely existed by 2000. Last gig. Ooh, and man, I wish I knew how to spell Glastigwenye. Guess we'll never know. Maybe she's just not listed on the timeline. Or they do that thing where they refer to everybody by their non-cape names, which makes it hard. Either way. So, getting back to the chapter, Danny wants to talk to Taylor alone. Tag says that they can do that. And then, Taylor's getting all mad. She's getting really... her clenched Arthur fist only clenches further. Somehow there are two right hands of Arthur clenching. And then, Kaie shows up. They all head down to the... They'll head down to the interrogation room together. I think pictured here, and I haven't talked to Vic about this, but my assumption is that who we're seeing is Quinn Kaie, Danny, and Miss Militia, and that Tag is not actually in this lineup here, but I'm not 100% sure. Miss Militia asks Danny if he knew that Taylor was Skitter, and at first he says yes, and then he says no, and I mean, I think that he sensed that something was wrong, but like 0% did he know that she was Skitter. Like, he just did not connect those dots ever, and that's fine. There weren't like a lot of clues for him, to be honest. I know that Skitter has the same hair as Taylor, but like, I don't know, a lot of people have curly hair. I think it would have been actually pretty crazy if he had been able to connect the dots. Like, impressive. But he had the normal amount of dot connection. So they enter the scene has finally come. They enter the room, as seen here. And then Danny is, has to process Taylor as she's all in her outfit that says villain on it and looking kind of, unkempt with her hair all messed up in her face, unable to swoop it to the sides or anything. Bill says, you haven't seen the discarded Danny interlude where he made a scrapbook of Taylor that had clippings of Skitter in it? It was before this. No, I haven't seen the discarded Danny interlude. I can only assume you're joking. There are many weird things like that in this book where there are discarded chapters, etc. But I've never heard of a missing Danny chapter. His feelings were as mixed as mine. I could tell, just by looking at him, by imagining what he'd been through, the person standing by, dealing with the aftermath of everything I'd done, his frustration, his confusion, pain and embarrassment, his loneliness, disappointment, his fear. And somehow, as though it were too much to bottle in, it seemed to boil over, and in the form of one singular emotion. So, he gets up like he's ready to slap Taylor or clock her or whatever, probably slap. But she lifts her face to take the slap, but he doesn't. He hugs her. And Miss Militia is she like goes to stop him, but then Tag mumbles something at her to stop her from going and stopping Danny. And I think Tag is probably pretty disappointed at the hug. He's probably like, dang it, I wanted him to slap her. That's what I was looking for happening. It says his hand palm open. But I mean, like, you can close a fist while it's swinging, if you're crazy. And, they stand there for a couple minutes, apparently, unmoving, unspeaking, and eventually Tag is like, okay, this has gone on long enough. Let's talk. He doesn't say the first part, just the let's talk. And then Kaye says that there's no reason to speak further unless you're capitulating. Which I find funny. But then Tag insists on sort of retreading the same ground they've been on in the negotiations so that it's all said in front of Danny. And, they sort of go over everything we discussed in the previous chapter, but with a clearly incredibly biased view coming from Tag, being mostly directed at Danny. Alien Cat Daddy says, Tag has to be your favorite character if you're using that voice. No, it's just really funny. Like, I like being Tag for a moment. He's just such a weird asshole. Like, and I do totally... Like, I feel like I know a lot of people like Tag. So, like, he feels very, like, tangible to me. I mean, that's what's great about this book, is most of the characters are like that. Where was I? You want to depose me, raising Miss Militia to my place. Yeah. And they sort of go over all this stuff with Danny. Really good dialogue here, but I obviously can't get into like every last line. But he asks Danny more or less the same question his friends asked him back in Arc 16 before they went to the debate about, like, would you rather be ruled over by the Undersiders or the people who used to rule over it? And Danny's like, I know that this isn't like an actionable answer, but I wouldn't like to be ruled over by any villains, please. And it's like, you make a solid point. And then Tag starts like listing off the things that the Undersiders have done, going through, talking about like Regent first, probably because he's the worst one. Then saying how like Imp psychologically and mentally tortures gang members, and then like Taylor points out like, yeah, she did clear gang members out of an area that you couldn't get to stop, preying on people. That is true. But Tag just keeps going through, talks about Rachel, makes some good points about her chewing up people, and then brings up Gru and makes an argument that like maybe works on Danny. Maybe if Danny's like so completely out of the loop that he doesn't know who Burnscar is, that Gru killed Burnscar like it was like this big thing, and it's like, weren't your guys also trying to kill Burnscar? Like that was everyone's goal. What are you talking about? I don't know. It seems like a dumb complaint. It's like, oh, Gru was good until he killed Leviathan. Can you believe he killed some? It's just so stupid. Anyway. He was good until he killed Jack Slash. And then Taylor admits that she had a romance with Gru and that he was her rock. And then she talks about Tattletale. She cuts off Tag on this one, and she speaks first about how Tattletale's their best bet at actually stopping the end of the world, stopping the Endbringers and all. And then he gives like a version of events so biased that we know it's like nearing completely untrue for Tattletale's backstory. Vale says, I think you should do Tag voice crossovers. Everyone sounds like Tag. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a funny enough bit that it's probably going to happen at some point. The seeds have been planted, as the chapter would say. Alien says, lol, do they drop the end of the world business right in front of Danny? They do indeed. She even brings it up earlier in the conversation when she goes, have you heard that the world is going to be ending in 2 years? That's part of why the PRT is falling apart. It's kind of like, what she's doing there is pretty slick because she's both informing him of a truth and using it to cover up the real reason the PRT is breaking apart. It's pretty clever. She's a smart cookie, this Taylor. Vale's new idea, Worm audiobook, read by Tag. And it's all the characters would sound like that. And my voice box would be broken after a single chapter. I don't think I could read even one chapter like that in like a serious like single sitting. Just it wouldn't happen. I'd be like sputtering and dying. Oh, also, like, Tag is doing a thing here that is, like, done by the heroes over and over again, which is, they talk about, like, Panacea was somehow influenced by Tattletale into doing the stuff to Victoria, and it's like, I just can't imagine why they would think it's Tattletale who, like, she was literally being worked on by Jack. Like, Jack, the guy who has turned, like, a bazillion capes insane. Like, I don't know. Vale says, with Tag-like commentary as it is read... Oh, dear Lord, yeah. He'd be like, I can't believe I'm reading about this villain, and I'm supposed to empathize with her. Alien says, I'll be honest with you, every time I read this arc, I feel myself thinking that is on point. Wait, which bit's on point? Oh, and Vale says, lol, yes. I mean, Tattletale pulled the Band-Aid off, with her... Tattletale pulled the Band-Aid off with, her dad... Or... Tag pulled the Band-Aid off with her dad. Well, if you could explain that slightly more fully, I will, I want to know what you mean. Tag is on point. Okay. He's on point in terms of, like, I think he's doing an okay job of trying to work over Danny, even if it doesn't work. He doesn't know Danny enough to know it won't work, but, like, you know, I don't think he's doing terribly. Like, he's not incompetent, I don't think. But it doesn't end up working on Danny. It doesn't land. And in terms of, like, the way he described Tattletale's backstory, like, the girl who used her power to convince her brother to kill himself, like, it might make sense from his perspective that he believes that, but, like, you know, he's obviously pretty wrong about, like, what happened. But yeah, he's adept at trying to get Danny to turn against Taylor, I would say. He's a... Anyway, this is when Danny says that he wouldn't want them running the city, and then when Taylor brings up the ABB and Empire 88, at first Danny's trying to say something like a justification, and then Taylor's like, we were just pretending things weren't bad back then. And Tag's like, you don't have your dad's support. And then Danny contradicts him and says that he's wrong. She does have not only the support of the people, but also his support, even if he doesn't understand, like, the whole situation. And then Tag starts trying to play it off like, oh, of course you trust your daughter. Oh, I know what it's like to be a parent. And then Danny's like, hey, no, I'm not letting you do that. You were trying to use me, like, wield me as a weapon in this way, and now you're getting the other side of the sword chucks. You've sword chucked yourself, sir. Vale says, he was also situated near the Seamerg for a pretty long time. Suspicious. Is that true? I don't think he actually came into contact with the Seamerg. Vale, you're always memeing. I can never tell when you're being serious. Anyway, let's see here. Yes, so this is when Danny's saying all the good stuff about Taylor and really being a pretty good dad, stepping up for once. You know, I think when people are like, Danny's a good dad, they're thinking about this part, and they're not thinking about all the other parts where he wasn't a good dad. Which is most of the book. Vale says, I believe it, so it might be true. Okay. Let's see here. Tag brings up the deadline of sunset. Says that they're not going to cave in to Skitter's extortion, and that she's too small scale. She doesn't understand the ramifications of their actions. And then he explains this whole thing of basically, like, either we'll survive and go on, or it's like we'll win, or we'll survive and go on, or if you actually, like, kill us all, you'll have proved my point and turned things again. But I gotta say, like, if they did get to the level of the Slaughterhouse 9, like he brings up, he says, then we win. Your side wins the battle, loses the war. And it's like, I guess? But if they kill off like an entire PRT and an entire protectorate, plus all these out-of-town capes, is it really worth it? Plus, you've gotten the ball rolling on a new, like kill level threat, where because you've upped the ante on them, then they'll up the ante. It's just a mess. You don't want to create a new Slaughterhouse 9 team. It's really, really not ideal. Alien says, half the cast has been situated near the Seamerg for too long. Exactly, yeah. Mirrodin, Armsman, tons of them. Vale says, it sets a new precedent, one that some could argue is less than positive. Then Tag basically says that, like, he's got to think on a national scale, and this is one site in one mid-sized city. And it is really funny what's going to happen in a second here. Kaye says that that something has happened, and it's in the news, and so Miss Militia checks. Well, they all check their phones, and Miss Militia sees that they have moved the property around, and apparently the person whose name that Tattletale put it into was Sierra Kiley. Oh my word! So this Taylor's heart grows 3 sizes that day, much like the Grinch when she hears that Sierra is now the property owner of the portal area. Danny doesn't really understand it. Kaye explains it to them. Tag says, like, right away that, like, they already know that it's somebody who's controlled by the Undersiders who owns all the property now. Like, they know that 1 and 1 is 2. And then I like this bit where Taylor goes, I resent the notion. But it would be amusing if it were true. You might even have to rethink what you were saying about how narrow my worldview is. I mean, that's a whole other world. Anything but narrow when you think about it. I love this. She's being so catty. It's so good. Like, me too, Taylor. Vale says, Sierra's new job sounds cool. What do you work for? Own millions of dollars of property and not sell it. Alien says, Danny's wondering who the fuck Sarah is. Definitely. I know you meant Sierra. It was double funny that it was Sarah on the... Let's see here. So, Miss Militia, well, Danny asks Miss Militia why she's here. Is it in case Taylor gets violent? And then she's like, no, she's not violent. Not in that sense. Which I gotta say, like, probably Miss Militia saying that did a lot to help Taylor. The fact that, like, the actual superhero in the room is like, no, that's not actually why I'm here. I'm not like a bodyguard. I'm like a negotiator. But Miss Militia refuses to speak. And she's like, I have a right to silence. I plead the fifth here. I'm not going to say anything that is not incriminating, but you know what I mean. Would be negative, really would put her in the bad books of like Tag or whoever. So she's using her right to silence to avoid having to firmly take a stance here, which is, Taylor's not happy with it, but I think it's smart. Miss Militia's doing what she should be doing here, I think. Alien says, why do you think Miss Militia is so gentle with Taylor comparatively? Because I think after she talks to Taylor in Arc 21, she's already talked to her in the past. She shot her with a shotgun in the past. But after having like a third conversation with Taylor, she like starts to really understand her, I think. And once they know that Taylor's trigger event, because Taylor tells them in Arc 21, was caused by Sophia, she probably feels to a certain extent like guilty about it, you know. That's what I kind of assume. They never say that, but I think it's there. Because she apologizes for the bullying stuff, and she's like almost shocked into silence when Taylor tells her that Sophia gave her the trigger event when she, like, from the bullying. So yeah. Oh, Vale says, as she says it, Miss Militia's power coalesces into a haze of green and black, switching out the dual rifles with fly swatters. Man, imagine Miss Militia dual-wielding fly swatters, like battling. That would look very funny indeed. And then Miss Militia says she's conserving her strength. She doesn't want to wear herself out. Taylor says they're not fighting, and and I kind of find it funny because it's like they may not be physically fighting, but they're clearly fighting. Like, Tag and Taylor are actively fighting. So is Kaye. Danny's in the room. Anyway, so Miss Militia is like, I hate you, Taylor, in this moment because you made us call her. And she doesn't say who her is. But Tag warns Danny that he should leave now. Get out while you still can, because you're never going to have any peace of mind after this shit. You won't have any of that peace of mind. Had to give the Tag fans what they wanted. And then Danny justifies his decision to stay. It's every time that he thought that he should give space, that he should look away, in the end, all of those times were what he regretted most. And Taylor is very happy for the support. I like this little bit. I find it also like a nice little touch in a book, like a lampshade hanging almost. Our guest didn't arrive right away. It might have been fitting in a dramatic way for her to appear as we finished our dialogue, but things weren't so carefully orchestrated in the real world. Nice little touch in the writing. Those things they said you did, my dad murmured. Mostly true, I said. This moment, again, with the theme of family, I think it's one of the... It's stronger here than in most chapters. She explains, and I'm just going to read this bit. He's squeezing her hand, and she says, I wanted nothing more than for my dad and I to talk for a month straight, just to hash things out, to form some kind of balance, some semblance of a connection like we'd once had. Instead, there was only this, like the father-daughter relationship distilled. Not enough communication, barely any familiarity, both of us flooded with very different sorts of fear, confusion, and frustration. I imagined it was much like the bonds that had kept primitive families together in an era where living from week to week was a challenge. Basic, crude, but almost primeval. Yeah, like, the writing, I don't know. Wildbow's writing is so fucking good. I know that's not deep analysis, but that is how I feel. I wish I was better at some deeper analysis, but maybe someday. Just keep working on it. So the person arrives, and Taylor says that she's reminded of the Siberian, except with much more care. It's Alexandria. It's Rebecca Costa Brown. She walks through the crowd and she strides carefully, because if she bumps into you, she's gonna break your neck. I don't know if that would really happen, but it would be probably like walking into an immovable wall or something. Just a very painful bump. But yeah, she first compares her to the Siberian, and then she's like, "Oh man, Alexandria is just like me for real." It was me. She reached her home ground, and people started to recognize her. They reacted, moving out of her way, showing respect, showing fear in some cases. 3 of the wards were in the elevator when it stopped at the ground floor. Kid Win was taking his drone recharge station apart, which meant it was just Clockblocker, Crucible, and Vista that crossed paths with her. The wards took only a moment to recognize her as she entered the elevator, and the 2 native Brockdenites left, pulling a protesting, confused Crucible after them. I think that that's so funny. They, like, instantly bail from the elevator, and they're like, "You're coming too!" They just pull him along. Yeah, so she elevators down to them, etc. And Taylor feels like the sheer weight of her presence. Like when the door opens, she tries to back away from the table, even though she's shackled to it like a cornered animal. And then she tries to play it cool, even though she just did that, and goes, "Chief Director." "Deputy Chief, I've stepped down from my position." And then she shakes hands. She knows who Danny is. She's read all the files while she's been flying around. I think it's funny that Tag is like also like, "You sit in the main chair now." I mean, it makes sense because she's the like way higher ranking than him and stuff, but it's also just like, I mean, I'd get out of her way too. And then she reveals to Danny, like, no qualms about it, that she is in fact not only Rebecca Costa Brown, chief director of the PRT, well, deputy chief, but also Alexandria. Dun dun dun! She is just openly saying it. Well, it's Alexandria who says it. She just fully says, "otherwise known as Alexandria," and it's like, oh. Yeah. What was it though? Yeah, and that's how the chapter ends. With a dun dun dun, as many chapters do. Yeah. Another good one. Very, very good. Again, like, this arc is like vying for my top arc most of the time. It's like duking it out with the greatest of other arcs, like 29 and 30. Oh yeah, Alien says something similar. This arc is great too. Yeah. Chapter thoughts. yeah, again, like just some of the most, especially when I was reading it for the first time or listening or whatever, like the most compelling stuff. I was just like on the edge of my brain's seat. I was usually standing up and working while I listened to it, but Alien says just everyone's reaction at the end of it is enough to put it in my top 3. Yeah. Man. Yeah. The ending of this arc, very good. Val says, the whole arc was my favorite thing I had ever read until I read arc 30. It gripped me. Yes. I like arc 30 quite a bit myself. That's why it's in the running for... It's constantly battling like a parahuman who knows nothing else to be in the top spot. The only thing I wrote under arc stuff was still keeping that great pace. Each chapter feels distinct from each other and yet is still obviously in a set. Yes. Alien says, I read arc 30 yesterday. I gotta say, fun reread. I'm assuming you had a good time with it. Because I always do when I go back for it. It's I don't know. It's like such a dynamic fight happens in it. So many things, so many moving pieces. It's really definitely the culmination of everything that's happened in the whole book. It's a great ending. An alien had said, "Oh yeah, I always find something new or that I missed." Yeah. I mean, there's so much going on that I feel like on every read I find more stuff in not just that arc, but like the whole book. There's always new little things that I'm just like, oh, I never really like focused on this bit, even if I read it and theoretically knew it. Vale says, Worm has a bit of magic to its writing that even half dozen times finished, I still found new things. Arc 30 is a microcosm of that, and it is dense and doesn't seem it at first. Yeah, it's very dense, very dense. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about the later arcs, I think I'm just underrating 27 in my mind, because 27 is like a banger. Okay, this is definitely in my top 5 as well. Anyway, moving on to the characters section. I listed even characters who weren't in the chapter tags, because I was like, well, they mentioned them, even if they were only there for a moment. So Jessica, she only gets like 2 lines, but she's doing a decent job when she's there of trying to be like this equalizing force, trying to stop them from doing the dumb things that Tag wants to do, like upping the ante with Danny and stuff. But in the end, she's not able to get this accomplished. She tries to keep Flechette's personal business personal, but I'm glad Miss Militia was there to clarify things, because I think that her former teammates deserve to hear what she told them. Alien says, have you read the others? I've only done Pact. Vale says, I've read everything else as well multiple times, though I keep pausing on Pale for some reason, even though it's amazing. Alien says, was gonna read it after it was done, but I got really deep into, I'm guessing that's A Practical Guide to Evil. Just initialized. Vale says, Ward is so good, it deserved better handling by fandom. Fandom is in quotes. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize this at the time, that other people, like, I knew that there were Worm readers who read the beginning of Ward and stopped reading it. But, like, I was following along with it with We've Got Ward, and I had always misinterpreted the fans' general reaction to be that other people liked it too. I mean, I think Ward is strictly better than Worm. Like, I think Ward is incredible. I'm glad I'm going through Worm. I love Worm, but I just think Ward is better. Alien says, I keep hearing about the Ward fan base. What the fuck happened? Vale might be able to elucidate that more. I'm not fully sure, but, like, I read the Wildbow postgame on Ward, and it was like, it made me feel bad because he felt so bad, and he felt like he had failed with Ward, and I do not agree with him. I think that he succeeded with Ward. And, like, I totally understand, like, when other people are telling you your art is good, but you're looking at it and you're like, this is definitely bad. But also, he's wrong. He's just wrong. You're so wrong, Beverly. Vale says, a small number of very loud people didn't like Ward and continued to post and hate on it in every possible instance. It made no sense, just a tiny group of haters. It was so bad, Wildbow rushed to finish it and end the terrible experience. Yeah. Fuck those people. Annoying. I still think that what we, like, I wish it had more time to breathe at the end, but I mean, what we got was incredible. I don't. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I hate, but, like, I don't post about it. Oh. Part of the problem was the tiny hate group was vocal against anyone who liked it as well. That sucks, and they suck. Anyway, moving on past feeling bad about that to feeling good about the characters. We already talked about Jessica. Dennis, our clock-based friend, he was there, and he was in the loop about Flechette, as the Ward's team leader, but he didn't get a lot to do in this chapter. He just sort of was shocked a bit. He did have that really funny moment when him and Vista pull Crucible out of the elevator. I think that part's great. Oh, Alien says, damn, that's whack. I agree. Wholeheartedly. So moving from Denny, definitely Denny, to Missy. She gets probably the most characterization out of the heroes aside from Miss Militia in this chapter. She gets that great moment earlier where she's like, fuck this, fuck you. I thought her reaction was very good to hearing about Flechette, and I think it's well voice acted in the audiobook. And that's why when I read it out, I basically just tried to mimic the way that Rain reads it. So, let's see here. Crucible. Don't remember his first name or if we ever learn it. That's right, Crucible. I didn't even do enough research to see if you have a first name. I like Crucible. I think there's a lot of weird, funny moments that happen with Crucible, and I also think he's got a cool power. I think it's delightful that he got dragged out of an elevator by his new friends. Chris the Kid Win. He... Weirdly, I think that his interaction with the one time he speaks up, it's to sort of like say that the Undersiders would go after their families. Typical hit rate with Kidwin, usually missing. So he's wrong on that count. Sorry, kid. Adamant and Triumph are basically just mentioned. They're going to be motorcycling around the city to be like mobile patrol and be able to, suddenly quickly react to crap. Seer and Dovetail similarly are just going to be out and about, but and they're just doing troop movement stuff. I wrote here, this has nothing to do with anything, but I wrote, I don't know why, but when I imagine Seer, he's basically just Shoot McMahon from Hunter x Hunter. And as far as I remember, I hadn't seen Hunter x Hunter when I first listened to the audiobook, so he must have just morphed from whatever I imagined the first time to being Shoot McMahon. And I'm fine with this. He can remain Shoot. Rebecca Costa Brown. She has so much presence that it bowls Taylor over. It's probably a low-key parahuman back of your mind reaction where just being in the presence of the person connected to that shard is ugh. She's just overwhelmed. Which is, fair. I think I, too, would be overwhelmed by the presence of Alexandria. She seems very, unfettered by the recent negative events that have happened in her life. She's just doing her thing still. Hana, she is, like we said in the text itself, trying to conserve her strength by not taking part in the arguments, by not staking a claim to her opinion than having to justify herself. She's doing a lot less mental wiggling and wriggling than Taylor or Miss Militia. She's not having to mentally duck and weave. That's the thing. And I think it's smart. She will still have reserve energy for things that are to come. Tag, he is continuing to be pretty ruthless. He's just doing the same things he's been saying he was going to do since the start of Arc 21. He very much is the person that he presents himself as. I think he's a great antagonist. And I feel it coming on. Vale's going to be like, antagonist? And yes, that. He's not as intimidating an enemy as Alexandria, but I think the two of them are treating the situation so similarly and have, identical goals. They're very, very in line with each other. They're kind of like a good mirror. Taylor sees the mirror of herself and Alexandria, and, that's definitely there, but I see the mirror of the two directors, the unpowered and the powered. Clearly she's much more effective and much more intimidating because she's got the power, but they're kind of doing the same thing on different scales. Protag, you mean, says Vale. No, he's not the protagonist. No way. Anyway, I shall continue to talk about Tag in the other chapters. I think he's great in this one, but I do want to move on to our dear friend Quinn Kaye. I find it funny that his, just for whatever reason, that his assistant is named Cecily, because it makes me think of Cecily Strong, and I think Cecily Strong is pretty funny. Just like theoretically, Cecily is just a name out in the world, but I have never once met someone named Cecily. Alien says, yeah, the title of Twig's sequel is called Tag. Yeah. Tag just appears in the Twig universe and it's about him. When he dies, he gets isekai'd. He's like, suddenly I'm in another world. This is just like in my Japanese anime. Oh man, I just imagined all the great possibilities of Tag as the actual protagonist of a story. If it was like a comedy book, I would find it very good. Anyway, Dale says, Alexandria is like a threat with a measure of inevitability to it. A promise? Too feeble. People break promises too often. A curse? A malediction? Too magical. Yes. Alexandria is about to lead to some incredible dialogue in the next chapter. But yeah, Mr. Kaye, he just continues to be like what I find really like, you know, they're just characters you really, really like, and I just really like him. I think he's great. I like that when Taylor said that she needed 5 minutes of quiet, that after he asks about the pen scratches, he doesn't say anything more. He stops talking. Like, he's nailing it. I know that he has different ideas of what they should do than Taylor, but he hears what she has to say and he acts on it. He does the plan that she wants to do. I think it's funny that, like, all the different times when he kind of like would push back in a normal situation, if they were sort of two normal people, but like he's just like, I'm dealing with a supervillain. This is how it's gonna be. Yeah. Moving on from my favorite crush, Quinn Kaye, we will talk about Danny. Very important chapter. This whole chapter is about him. It's about pulling him into the scene. I really like getting to hear his like support of Taylor. I like how he's actually like hearing her out, and he's not just being like, because you know Danny's kind of a, I mean, he's pretty normy in like most of his takes. He's really going outside his comfort zone to try and give the benefit of the doubt to Taylor, and I appreciate that. This is probably Danny at his best in this arc. I know we all love Danny, but we gotta be honest with ourselves. Mid-tier dad. Mid to low tier dad. Anyway, the interaction when he hugs her is pretty good. I'm glad that he doesn't actually slap her. I think that would make him like a lot more unlikable to me. I think I wouldn't have warm feelings toward Danny and talk positively about him if he actually had slapped her, even if he then hugged her in follow up. Awesome. Greg made the anime title of it, and I'm gonna read it in Tag's voice, because even though normally I read these anime titles like I was reincarnated in, instead of my Britishy voice, it's I was reincarnated in another world full of biotinkers, and now I have to avoid murderous children. I was that's definitely the the manga, and then when they turn it into an anime, they make the sentence even longer somehow. Oh, copy paste fail. It was the double up, and I failed to notice. I tried to just read the double. What a fool. Alien Cat Daddy says, is it implied that he maybe hit her mom? I might be imagining that. It's like, okay, so in the full text, it's not really implied that he hit her, but in Danny's chapter, without the context of knowing outside of like what he says there, in that chapter, it seems like he might have, but it's like Danny is saying that he lost his temper in front of Taylor 3 times, and he yelled at Annette 1 time. But Annette was in a casket. She was a dead body at the time. He didn't actually yell at her while she was alive. So, you know, his chapter is his own self-loathing, and so it comes off way worse because he doesn't clarify. And the reason the reason it doesn't have the clarity, I think, aside from the, like, it's in his perspective, he wouldn't have this thought, is to cloud what happened for the audience. I think it's to sort of hide information for a bit. But I'm pretty certain, because, yeah. It seems when he thinks about his wife like she left him, he doesn't even think at any point that she's dead. Just, it was like X amount of time since she was gone. That kind of thing. Vale says, Danny had rage issues, but he was never physical. This scene is a perfect embodiment of it. He's enraged, then hugs Taylor. It's a snapshot of his struggle, in my opinion. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I generally agree that this is a pretty good little slice of Danny. Anyway, yes, if Danny had slapped Taylor, I would have turned on him pretty quick. If I'm being real. And then the last person on my list is Taylor herself. She's doing okay this chapter. She's like kind of freaking out, but it's like a weird, I can't understand my own emotions freak out. She even says like about her weird confused emotions and stuff, and yeah. We've kind of talked about Taylor enough for this time. She's sort of the main person I talk about all chapters. So, for the powers, knowledge, and world building, the thing that I had pulled out was our guest didn't arrive right away. It might have been fitting in a dramatic way for her to appear as we finished our dialogue, but things weren't so carefully orchestrated in the real world. What a great little touch. Vale says, imagine having a teenage daughter while trying to get the docks project going, seeing her moving $1 million properties. Hey, about the docks, Taylor. Yeah. Well, she hasn't restarted the ferry, although she could, but she has actually, fixed up the docks to a huge extent that they probably wouldn't have been focused on if she hadn't been there, like, as the villain presence or whatever. So, you know, he may not directly know it, but she's been working on it. For other world building, I don't know. I think there's not very much world building in this. There's just like the stuff that we knew was inevitable. The property was in the Undersider's hands. Now it's sort of more obviously consolidated. It's under one name, because before it was under a bunch of like different names, and I would have to assume shell companies and stuff. But now it's just kind of, it's there. Yeah. I think I'm moving on from this section. I put this here right before the audience participation so that it was before everybody sort of leaves at the end or anything, but this might seem out of nowhere. I know that it's been over a year, so it's probably like random or too late or something, but I had never talked about Palestine because my platform only has like a 5-person audience total. So I just thought like it doesn't matter because no one's going to hear this, but I just want to say it anyway. I support Palestine and believe that America needs to not only stop sending weapons immediately, but also place an arms embargo on Israel and the IDF. And from deep in my heart, I hope that Israel will be stopped and that Palestine will be free from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. I think that this book is inherently very political. The way that the world is viewed, the kinds of people who get focused on, and I think it's relevant. I think that if I just think the values displayed in the book, they would that Wildbow would be like, I don't even know his stance because I haven't looked into it or anything, but I just have to imagine based on the values displayed that he would be against the genocide that's happening, and that he would have the conscience to see the situation for what it is. Anyway, I guess moving on from that, to the audience participation, we've got 22.3. What's a favorite perspective trick that is facilitated by a parahuman power, like Taylor listening to multiple simultaneous conversations with bugs? Vale says, my favorite perspective trick is from the time Brian, with his new Trump power, connects with Taylor to experience her bug control bug slash control capability. How it makes him feel tiny in the center of a multi-block radius area of awareness. It was a nice scene and almost amazing to keep in mind every time Taylor is on screen. It is barely mentioned and touched on, but it is her perception norm. Yeah, and she will think multiple times throughout the book about how she's like intentionally stepping outside herself with the bugs, and she verbalizes that to Brian. She tells him that that's what she does. Is very vulnerable emotionally. And also, seeing Brian's power do that, it's like he's able to empathize and understand her on a level that is so, like, different from how anyone else could, I guess, because he, like, being able to use her power, like, the powers are so intrinsically, like, linked to who they are. I forget when Tattletale says it, but at some point she says, like, every time we use our power, we're digging all of our shit up. There is, like, no going easy. And it's, like, probably a lot of capes feel that way. That they're just, like, that their powers are so intrinsically linked to who they are and their own emotions that, like, it's always, like, it's always a big deal when they're being used, even if people are, like, acting casual about it and stuff. They're, like, digging up the worst of themselves to enact it on the world. But, and not always the worst of themselves, but you know what I mean. The shit that they're most traumatized about. So yes, Brian seeing the world through Taylor's power, very cool perspective. Use. Greg had said 22.3. I think Vale nailed it. I'll also give a shout out to Chevalier's stando vision though. Yeah. I like that Chevalier does see, like, a weird, like, image that is either tied to the origin of the power or, like, one of the, like, kind of what the power is about. Like, there's so many different ones that I'm not even sure how to, like, describe all of them. Like, he can even see stuff like powers that are normally invisible. He can just see them. He can see the power connections between Taylor and her bugs, for instance. It would be bad for her if she lived in the same city as him. I gotta say. It wouldn't exactly be hard for him to find her. Oh, there's power connections everywhere in this part of the city. I wonder where Taylor is. And then Greg also shouts out a bit from Pale, but it's from so far into Pale that I am unfortunately not going to read the spoiler text because I have not read 20.E. I have only read up to, I think, arc 5, 6? Pale's very good, but it's, I didn't want to speed through it, and I was having a hard time keeping up with the book club thingy that we had for it, so I will eventually read Pale. I do like it very much. Oh, Vale says, need to run, take care all. Yep, I'm basically at the end, so, that is all good. The question for... Oh, and as far as, like, since I only got the 2 answers, I'll say my own favorite perspective trick. I really like when the perspective is technically Eidolon, but the chapter is Jessica's chapter, because what we're seeing is Eidolon's visions through a psychometry power to view her past week. And so he was just seeing, like, visions of what was happening to her. So, like, he was having the same, like, second person, like, close second person or whatever, perspective that the book chapters normally have in interludes. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Oh, and then there's one near the end of the book where character sees through the perspective of the clairvoyant who can see everything all the time, and that version of the perspective gets to see a lot of like really they can dip in on literally any scene, so they're seeing all sorts of different things. Anyway, and it feels totally justified. So for the 22.4 question, I have unfortunately not come up with anything. I was trying to think about it, and just nothing was taking. I will attempt to have the 22.4 question soon and post it in the chat, and I will, of course, read it as the audience participation reminder at the beginning of the next stream. I am going to start that old outro music, which, as we know, is the same as the intro music. As has been the case for several weeks now, the music used in this episode is Imago by ScarlettXOX. You can find her work at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. The Discord server link, as well as all the other links, can be found in the stream description, as well as the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There's also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Now I'll just mute myself until the song's over, unless somebody has a final parting goodbye, and then I will address that as it happens. by rewatching the speed draw, I have realized that it definitely is tag, actually, because the reference image used was tag from Arc 21, so the verdict is in.